Mm, mm. Ja,
Nee,
ja.
ik wil naar Frankrijk, ik moet een vignet hebben. Papier. Dan moet je een vignet fit Air France.
Zou die het zeggen? Of
Ja, zeker. En je moet een fotocopie met de computer de twee kanten opsturen. De naam van Jokman Christine.
Een fotocopie hiervan pakken.
Nee, ze gaan dat vragen. Als je zegt met de computer, ze gaan zeggen wat moet je allemaal doen. Dus voor naar Frankrijk binnen te kunnen.
Ja, ik zal het een keer.
Dan krijg ik een boete. En dat kost 3 of 5, 6
En dan moet je op oma rennen, is dat?
Hè?
Dat is op oma rennen.
Ja, de notto.
Ik
Ja.
zal eens zien of dat lukt.
En de plakken, ze vragen de nummerplaat, alles zit erop, hè, op dat papier.
Ja. Oké, ja. Ik weet niet of dat ik het hier ga. Allee, ja.
Allemaal wel.
Ja, ik weet niet exact wat ik moet doen natuurlijk. Hè.
Ja, maar dat gaan ze zeggen. Dan willen ze.
Maar hier zijn zoveel, dat is ook allemaal in het Frans.
Dus voor die
Maar om een ticket te bestellen.
een vignet.
Maar je moet een ticket bestellen, staat hier. Dus dan moet ik dat betalen hier ook. Hoeveel is dat?
Ja, je moet
Ah, ja,
betalen.
3 euro maar.
Ja, dat kost 2 keer niks. Ik zal je het geld geven. Maar je moet met de computer.
Ah ja, je moet je
betalen.
kenteken hebben.
Ja.
Kentekenbewijs, dat is
hier,
dat.
ja.
Ja, André, ik zal zoiets beneden.
Ja, doe maar. Ja,
Zien of het hier lukt.
ja, dank je.
André, als ze hier een aanvragen, op wie zijn naam moet ik het dan doen? Oma ook?
Ja,
Alles oma.
Op oma.
Ja.
De notto zit, de plakken zitten.
Ja, oké, ça va.
Volgens mij nog niet.
Ja. Hallo? Ja, ben ik, André. Ik moet hier. Ze gaan dat met de post naar ons adres opsturen, die sticker. Ah, ja, ja oké, ik moest het gewoon weten, dus ik moet het adres van hier ingeven, hè? Ja, oké, ça va, ik denk wel dat het in orde komt dan. Oké, ça va. Ja, geen probleem, geen probleem. Mm-mm.
last night there was lots of discussion from a number of pro players, especially some of the Canadians, as to what team they might look to form. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Cover the roster things to start with. We don't know what's going on with some of these teams in terms of when they're going to make some confirmations. Hopefully all's well with Arceties. Of course, we are probably expecting that Falcons will announce something different relatively shortly. We think that Selim is going to go there. Now, FaZe haven't said goodbye to Selim precisely yet, like they did to Abizi the other day, but Selim was an unrestricted free agent. Likely, in due course, that's going to happen. They've probably paid him a lot of money to get him to the Falcons, that's our understanding. And Arceties is, we think, probably getting replaced effectively by Kismet. It's all kind of strange. But, yeah, Exnid, well, I suppose it really is Arceties replaced by Selim, and then Exnid back to the S&G instead of TJ, with then Kismet rounding out the team. That's the rumour, but of course, until things get confirmed, things can all quickly change. Fellow also revealed he's going to host a 10k tournament. We saw yesterday there was that $23,000 bell tournament that Ilian the guys won. Fellow's going to run his own 10k. I think studied it this recently to pretty good success. So looking forward to that as we get into the off-season. Speaking of tournaments though, there's other things going on as well. This is one of them. It's the COD Mobile World Championship. Now, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but I just wanted to quickly look at the map set they play. So COD World Championship 2025 for COD Mobile. They've got 16 teams, down to which is, first of all, like, let's just start there, right? Our World Championship has 8 teams. The COD World Championship back in the day, pre-CDL, used to have 32 teams. The COD Mobile has 16. They've got 4 GSL-style groups of 4, so not single round robin. GSL is basically win 2 before you lose 2. You get to an 8-team double in playoffs, then a double in finals on the final day. 7th to 9th of November, if you guys are looking to tune into this, it's obviously quite a while away.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
This is the settings and everything that they play with. $850,000 on the line. This is the map set. The maps in that game are so good. And this is what they're playing. So they've got Apocalypse from Black Ops Cold War. They've got Combine, which is a Black Ops 3 map. It was in the beta, if you guys remember. It was actually played right at the start of that game in hardpoints, and then they realised there are better options. Hassie from BO4 also came back. Slums from Black Ops 2. Summit from Black Ops 1 that came back numerous times. Search and Destroy, there's a few maps that I'm not so familiar with. Coastal, Metropolis, Tunisia. Those are all COD Mobile specific maps. I looked up the maps though, they look kind of nice. Firing Range, a Black Ops 1 map that came out in 2010, 15 years ago. They're playing it in COD Mobile World Championships. Standoff from BO2 came back in Cold War. And then Control, they're playing Crossfire, which is that original COD 4 map from 2007. They're playing Raid, and they're playing Takeoff. Now, Takeoff was a DLC map in what it was called Stadium back in Black Ops 1. Then they brought it back in Black Ops 2 as another DLC map with a, refreshed, let's say, aesthetics called Takeoff. So it's kind of incredible, right? This is the map form. Of course, it's kind of like a best of COD, but they've got maps in here from COD 4, and they've got a ton of maps from Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, that are literally 15 years old at this point, pretty much, but still deliver better results than what we get today. So that's that tournament. The other big tournament, though, is the Esports Nations Cup. So let's just quickly break this down. If you look at football or soccer, right, if you look at FIFA, the, let's say, overarching body there, they run a couple of tournaments. The big one is the FIFA World Cup, right, which is every nation in the world faces off. There's also the Club World Cup, which is less of a big deal, but it's kind of a similar thing. That's effectively what the Esports World Cup is. And for esports, I get that makes sense. You represent your team, your organisation. The players fly to represent Falcons or Optic or FaZe or whatever the case might be. For esports, that makes sense. But for some particular esports, there is the strength in depth to actually run a nations cup, whereby you have different teams formed for different countries. So this is what they propose, and they actually go through a number of the countries here in the video. I will just quickly pause on the UK real quick, just because it has always been a question when it comes to these World Cups as to whether the UK would be split up. Would it just be England, Scotland, Wales? Would you have like a full Irish team, including Northern Ireland, or how would that work? I don't know. Probably not going to be an issue. It's just going to be UK, we think. But anyway, it was confirmed yesterday that the Esports World Cup Foundation are going to run another event. They're doing the World Cup every year, which is the main one, which probably makes sense for like all esports. You can run the Esports World Cup as it was back in July for. The Esports Nations Cup, some esports, and maybe this applies to cards, don't have the strength in depth to really make this work. Not to say, though, that it would be impossible to make it happen. So that's what we're going to talk about next. The next tournament, by the way, or the first one, is not this year, it's next year. So we're talking November 2026, which is an interesting timeline, right? Because presumably next year's Esports World Cup is going to be happening a similar time to this year. I mean, last year it was in August, this year it was at the end of July. Presumably a similar timeline is going to happen next year as well, but then there's going to be another event in November. So the question therefore becomes, okay, what game do we play? If it's the start of November, probably not going to have the new COD yet. So is it going to be the old COD or Black Ops 7, which I think people are probably hoping for, to be honest, rather than Modern Warfare 4, of which there have been some concerns, let's say, raised over the last few days. But it's going to be run every 2 years, so it's not going to be every single year. It's actually going to start in Riyadh, but then move around the world. So it's not just going to be in Saudi every year in November. The hosting country is going to be on rotation. Players represent their home nation, although what nation they represent is somewhat debatable, right? And we'll get into that in a second. Partnered with EA, Tencent, Krafton, and Ubisoft, right? So that doesn't say Microsoft, it doesn't say Activision Blizzard, but not to say that they wouldn't add those games at some point. They're looking at over 15 titles. And Call of Duty may well be included. There's no confirmation yet as to any games that are included. It's obviously a long time away, but COD was at the Esports World Cup. There is a feeling that it's very plausible that COD comes to the Esports Nations Cup as well. So first of all, I guess the question is, would there actually be a COD tournament there? Do we have enough countries that could have teams representing them to make this work for COD? You know, are we going to be able to have teams from, let's say, Germany or from Brazil or from South Korea, right? Like, particularly unlikely. For some countries, though, I think we absolutely could. Real says, Last Dance, Rancor, Super, Metals. Obviously, Rancor now off to Toronto, right? But Toronto Koi. But still, if they had to form a Spanish team, they would probably do something very similar to this. Now, over the last couple of years, we've put this together. This Crone put together back in 2022. The Call of Duty Vanguard World Cup. There's been lots of talk in COD for a long time about, you know, whether we could make a tournament like this happen, what that would look like. Now, as I say, it's likely that it would be the United Kingdom as opposed to Team England, Team Scotland. Back in the day, we probably could have formed a Welsh team as well. You know, we had Dave, we had Rated, and, you know, a couple of others. But Team Scotland today, I think we could definitely make a Scottish team. But if it's just going to be UK, then obviously it'd be very easy to make a UK team, but it would reduce the number of teams we could potentially have. Now, the other big question here is, how do you consider some of the ethnicities, which players can represent which countries? Because obviously, the vast majority of players are from the States. So then you've got to figure out what that team would actually be, right? First of all, what would Team USA be? It's got to, I mean, it's going to have to be Simp. I mean, you're probably thinking, what, Mercules? I mean, Simp, Mercules, Scrap. I mean, maybe you don't say Mercules, but like Simp, Scrap for sure. Probably Merc, and then you need another sub. You could say Shotzi, of course, but you could also just say Abizi, bring the Tiny Terrors back, and then Shotzi could play for Team Mexico, because Shotzi does have Hispanic heritage, as does Attach, actually. He's like part Mexican, I think part Japanese, so he could represent Japan, pretty unlikely. And anyway, people were debating it a couple of years ago, and also which teams or which countries players would be able to represent, of course. You know, for France, it would be Hydra, but also you could have Cobra and, you know, maybe Legends could play as well, then Breezy or Brezzy. Like, you're looking for, you know, you could have a French team, you could have a Spanish team, you could have a UK team, you could have a US team, you could have a Canadian team, right? You could probably find some Australian guys to play as well. We could get at least 8 teams, I think. Maybe we could get 12. I mean, who knows? After that, I think that's a bit of a question, but it's definitely possible. And the other big question is, what about Team Canada? What would they look like? What team would they put together? There was also discussion because apparently in FIFA, so a player must have been resident for 5 continuous years to be eligible through residency alone, parents or grandparents also. So, you know, he's kind of discussing that, like, I wonder how this would work, but maybe Kleenex could technically represent Canada just because he lived there for so long. But he's like, no, don't worry about that. I've got a Danish super team coming up. Give me a year. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But also like what percentage of that, because like Jake Hale, he's obviously done his analysis and he's 3% Danish. So like, does that count? Is that good enough to compete? I don't know. It's always a controversial one in sports in general, who can represent certain countries or whatever. But one of the other questions is, in addition to the teams that we could form, and as I say, this is a couple of years old at this point, but I think some of the general theories and player names anyway still apply. US, what would their team be? Plenty of options, right, to form a very good squad. And then Team Canada, like those would be, and also the UK team would obviously be the key contenders for a tournament like this. And it might be kind of, you know, like people might say, well, you're going to go out there to Riyadh and the US team are just going to win anyway, right? It's not even going to be close. And maybe there's some truth to that, but it's not like we can form some other decent teams. The Canadian team would be very good. Dashi says, at Illy, let's run it back type thing, right, for the Canadian team. Now, of course, there was also discussion, could Illy represent India, right? Like, obviously, Gersh tweeted out, Illy, Gersh, Creighton, Mohawk, right? So, like, anyone with that, let's say, ethnicity and backgrounds, maybe that could be a team. I don't know. It's something to think about anyway. I don't know how this tournament's really going to be run, but yeah, they're pumping the money in. Whether COD's even there is another good question as well. But assuming that Illy would prefer to represent Canada because better chance to win the tournament, then it would be Dashi, Illy. Who else would we get? Because there's plenty of other Canadian players to think about. The other good option would be Karma, right? Bring Karma back. And Karma was in the reply to this and says, at Dashi looking for 2, me, you, Illy, Cod looking for 1. So there you go. To start anyway, a very strong Canadian squad. Who would they round the team out with? Obviously Gunless, Canadian, Asim as well, other options. On this original list, we had Dashi, Gunless, Asim and Illy, as it was a couple of years ago. And at that time, right, Karma was very much so retired. Jimbo was another option noted here as a substitute French-Canadian player, of course. So, yeah, some other options to think about. But it would be very interesting if this actually does transpire. I think it's another question for me is how would the team be selected, right? Like, does each country get, like, a representative, not from a player perspective, but let's say from an overall esports league perspective, and then they select their players? Or are there some sort of, like, trials? Because I don't know, like, how would an American team be chosen? Like, there's so many players that presumably would want to play because it's a free trip to Riyadh to go and, like, basically guarantee at least making the finals and probably making a fair load of money. You know, and let's say you're Shotzi and you could represent the Mexican team, you'd probably prefer to represent the American team and go and guarantee the money, right? You'd think. So, I don't know. I'm not sure this is going to work the best for competitive COD. There are certainly other esports, like, let's say, Counter-Strike, where this would work extremely well. For COD, it might be a bit of a stretch. It may happen at some point, but it might not happen just yet. And it's going to be an event in November if it does happen. And that's pretty interesting because there aren't many championships historically that have been in November. There have only been 6, and there hasn't been one in 9 years. The guys that have won the most are actually Doug Sensor Martin, Aches and Mutation. They won a couple in November way back in the day. We're talking 2011. We're talking 20...
Bakit nie bez utry?
Last night, Shotzi revisiting a fair few clips from Codpast, especially a couple from Doug Sensor Martin, where he finds a clip where Snoopy, according to Doug, better than Shotzi in some capacity. Not turned out that way this season. Shotzi gave his thoughts on Snoopy in the relatively near past as well, but still, Snoopy had a great season individually, but Shotzi reckons like, come on, Doug, let's be serious for a second. For a month to your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. FaZe failing to deliver what their team should have delivered, given the Black Ops 7 might not be that good. It might not be the game that we're hoping that it's going to be. There's always optimism around it, but as a long-time COD fan, we know not to read into it too much. All I will say is that if Black Ops 7 is a good game, enjoy it while it lasts, because Infinity Ward are at it again over the last couple of days. Reality UK has come up with a few leaks on Modern Warfare 4 and suggests that the game does have doors. Doors are back. and Omni movement is gone. So Infinity Ward around it again. Whatever you think about the way the game has gone over the last couple of years, the direction that Treyarch and Sledgehammer are looking to take Infinity Wards, we know the type of players that Infinity Ward cater to. We know the type of players that the developers of Infinity Ward actually are. So you know the type of game that they're going to form. So, Black Ops 7, if it's good, get ready for hopefully a good season. And after that, maybe we can take a year off again, right? A couple of other things were going on. Zuma, the drama continued with the Imperial House situation we talked about yesterday, and he was firing back with a few people. They were talking about some of the pros in the Apex Legends side getting paid 400k, and Zuma says that a couple of pros in COD are getting paid basically double that. Triple that seems like a stretch. I don't know what Shots is getting paid. Like, that's the other question, right? I don't know what Pred's getting paid exactly. I'm pretty sure that Selim is getting paid well over 500, right? Not a million, but, well over 500, I think, is what Selim's on. And there have been some numbers that have flown around over the last few days. Not 100% sure what's true, but I would be surprised if Selim isn't the highest paid player in the league. And if he isn't, I think it's got to be Shotsy or something. There's nobody else. Even then, I don't see how that's possible. I don't know. Maybe Optic has like so much money. I would be very surprised if Selim isn't the highest paid player. He's certainly the highest paid player on any team that isn't called Optic, I would well imagine. And I think he's getting paid more than Pred as well, which is interesting because if it is true that Cell's getting paid more than Pred, which I think that he is, then does he kind of become the, not exactly face of the team, I still think that would be Pred, but does he become the decision maker? I don't know. It's interesting, right? If that actually is unfolding. But anyway, Zuba says that 400k for Pro Income, that's nothing compared to what some of these guys are getting paid in COD. Not many, and I think that Zuba was maybe, let's say, being slightly hyperbolic with some of the numbers here, but I'll share that clip for you guys in a second.
You're right. No. You see, now that they have two set backpedal, all right, let's not backpedal then. Okay, let's just go for it. Let's go band for band. Okay, what the fuck does an Apex player make, salary-wise? What do they make?
Napoleon Score. De beste live stats en instant updates. Officiële matchday-partner van de Jupiler Pro League.
He's making 400k, I bet? Okay, well that is significantly lower than top pro players. Significantly lower. Matter of fact, there's a couple players who are making triple that. Double that, triple that, just from salaries. Just from salaries alone. Right? Just from salaries. So, and there's also taxes, guys. And there's also taxes. You gotta remember taxes.
Let's talk about a couple of Optic things. Remarkably enough, Dashi is going into his 8th season with Optic. It could have ended numerous times, but when it didn't end, when Scump decided to retire and step away and say, look, Dashi, don't squander this opportunity. Well, he didn't squander the opportunity, right? 8th season under Optic is kind of remarkable to think about that. He came up teaming with Doug in Complexity back in World War II. Then he gets picked straight up to Optic for BO4, and the rest since then is very much history. And actually comparing some of the duo-ship here. Now, Scump and Crim, they teamed together for a very long time, and obviously back in the day there were more events. But Dashi and Shotsy have now played 24 events together on Optic. They've won 5 championships in that time. They've made 8 finals appearances. They've won 2 world championships, and their average placing is a 4.83, which is almost identical. Kind of remarkable, actually, that Brian Satz found these numbers. Almost identical to Scump and Nadeshot as a duo themselves. They played 23 events together, and again, it's kind of fascinating, right? And I'm sure Optic fans are looking at this and thinking, oh, well, here we go. Just because Scump and Nadeshot, they teamed in the worst of times and in the best of times, right? Like, the Optic teams that Scump and Nadeshot had alongside them weren't always the best, The Scump, Nade, Clayster, Proofy team was legendary. Of course, Bose was there on the lineup for some time. They won the X Games back in 2014 with that iteration that I mentioned. Without Bose, obviously, you had the Proof, Nadeshot, Clayster and Scump one. But, they had those times where it was bad. I mean, there was a time in Ghost where it was not looking good. And then Advanced Warfare, at the start of that game, when they did bring in Crim6 and they brought in, of course, Formal, then things got particularly serious. So maybe and obviously shortly after that, they went on to win a lot, right? Towards the end of their time together, they had more success than they had done kind of earlier on. So maybe Dashi and Shotsy are going through a similar renaissance, because you look at these numbers a while ago, it wouldn't have looked this good. Dashi and Shotzi's average placing is 4.8, which isn't like great. It's not bad, but it's not great. But think like how bad it was before what's happened recently, right? Like over the last couple of seasons, and certainly the last couple of events of this season, this average placing has got a lot better. Of course, it's not moved dramatically because averages and stuff, but still, right? Like maybe at this point of their career, they're actually going to start to see more success. And obviously, when Scump and Nachop kind of their tenure was towards the end of their time, that's when things really kicked on. Of course, Nachop stepped away, Karma came in. That's not going to happen with Dashi or Shotzi, but I think you get the point. Now, speaking of Shotzi, there were a couple of clips he was responding to, watching back this play of the year from last season when Dashi had this amazing 1v3 up against FaZe, and then a couple of other clips that I found pretty entertaining as well.
Yo, get ready, movie. How dirty. How dirty. Yo, he's acting like a homie boy. Yeah, I don't think yeah. Come on, Doug. Fucking Doug.
Shotzi gave his thoughts on Snoopy recently as well and said that he reckons Snoopy is a very talented player, but kind of put Snoopy in the category with Gwyn of not being the most efficient player in the game. Shotzi pretty much said, yeah, Snoopy is really good, but he's only particularly impactful when he's absolutely frying. And, you know, so Shotzi's opinion is that if Snoopy's going 40 in 28, then yeah, he's having tons of impact. But if Snoopy's going, I don't know, 29 in 31 or something, like that's not a Shotzi 29 in 31. Now, of course, Shotzi, you know, he might say that, and we know that Shotzi believes, and probably for good reason, that he understands the game at a very strong level. And also, you can't deny it, right? Like, there were times this season where you could say, oh, Shotzi, you were clown on the other teams for being terrible, not knowing how to win, and you guys are going 0-18 map count.
Legion of Judas flocked with stream. XQC was once a professional player.
What?
But for those who don't know, how good was XQC at Overwatch?
XQC Monkey is crazy. Yeah, unfortunately, mine's a little bit crazier.
During the 5 months he was part of the inaugural season of Overwatch League, he played a lot of Winston, and he was honestly pretty good back then, particularly his ults. He also represented Team Canada at the Overwatch World Cup, where they made 2 podium finishes, and he bagged the World Cup MVP in 2017. What seems clear is that XQC's play wasn't some weird fluke. He could hang with everyone in that first season, and he was good enough after that to help bring Canada to the finals twice. So the next time you're hanging out in the stream chat with other juicers, remember, you are in the presence of greatness. It's easy to forget that before
Today we're tasting the world's most exotic meats, starting with water buffalo, and it was a 10 out of 10. Super tender and juicy, so tender. No gaminess, and I actually think I'd choose it over beef. Next up, frog legs. Fried up, they're a little fishy, but really packed with meat.
It's like a fishy chicken.
Python was kind of like calamari, but a bit more tough and stringy. With a dipping sauce, it wouldn't be bad at all.
Kind of reminds me of frog legs.
Marinated the kangaroo in some herbs, citrus, and red wine. A bit gamey and lean, but surprisingly tender and reminded me of beef.
Melted in your mouth.
Next was ostrich. Honestly, quite tender, but it wasn't great. A very strong irony flavor that just didn't sit well at all.
I don't like this ostrich.
Ooh, oh, the aftertaste. Turtle. Buttermilk brined and fried into a nugget, and it might just be because I knew it was turtle, but this one was not for me. Fishy and stringy, no bueno. It turns out people eat and you can actually buy a possum. Did not smell good. It did not taste good. In fact, it weirdly tasted like canned tuna. Tasting beaver was not on my 2024 bingo card, but here we are, and I can't emphasize enough how much I dislike this one.
If you ever had an iron tasting food or like just blood flavor, that's not good. That costs $100.
Now that I'm a Florida man, I had to try gator. Almost like the dark meat of chicken, and it was really quite good.
This could pass for a chicken nugget.
Next was Maui Nui Axis Deer, and this one stole the show. Virtually zero gaminess, it is truly the Wagyu of venison. This $100 Bigfoot chicken tasted exactly like chicken.
By no means was it worth the price tag.
For the price, I really hoped the Bobcat would blow me away, but it did not. I've heard it can be good, so maybe I got a bad cut, but it was super gamey with an ammonia aftertaste.
What is that?
It's not like manure. It's not like tuna.
Today we're tasting the world's most exotic meats.
Started
Every type of egg.
coming in at 3 cents per egg, we have